So other things you need to decide right away. I need to be found. I was told I needed to be found in a recent job search. A recruiter recommended this to me. Yes, this is one way for people to find you. In fact, one of the cool things about this podcasting is that it actually is a great way for me to network with people. Now, why do I say that? I say that because when I meet someone and I talk about what we're doing and the work I'm doing and the work they're doing, I say, oh, by the way, I have a podcast. And they're like, oh, what's your podcast about? And we talk a little bit about podcasting and what I do and how I do it. So it actually helps to generate more of a conversation with them about me and about the work that I do. And here is, you can listen to my podcast. In fact, one of the things I've done now with my podcast is in the title, I've now started putting a little bit more of a filter, in a sense, on what the podcast is. Is it a consulting tip? Is it a training tip? Is it a general business tip? To hopefully get users, this is something I want to listen to. So yes, part of it is making yourself known, letting people know who you are, that you are a knowledge leader in the field. Having said all of that, the third thing that you need to figure out, we've talked about our concept. What do we want to talk about? The next thing that we want to do is, we've talked about why do I want to do it? Do I want to do it to make money? I want to monetize my podcast. I want to run ads on it. I want to get sponsors, which you can do. I want to just go ahead and do it and be a knowledge leader. The third decision you have to make is, do I want to do this solo? Do I want to do my podcasting all by myself? And, when you do that sort of thing, there are pros and cons to it. So when you do a solo podcast, I just need to put my note up here. When you do a solo podcast, there are some pluses and some minuses. And one of the pluses is you're the boss. You run it any way that you want. You want to ramble on, you want to script it, you want to use foul language in your podcast. It's whatever you want to do. You are the boss, which makes it a really good thing. Second, the podcast will succeed and fall because of you. So unfortunately, you can't blame anybody else. If your podcast succeeds, it's because of you. If it fails, it's because of you. And one of the other things about doing solo is you can do it anyway. You can have it very, very scripted. I do a scripted podcast, and we'll talk about scripted podcasts a little bit, or you can just ramble on. And there are a lot of people out there who ramble on, or they may have some sort of script. But a lot of solo people, and again, it depends on who it is. Some will do scripted, some will do rambling on. It really will depend on what you want to do. Now, the other type of thing that you need to decide upon is, do you want to do a co-host? Do you want to have a co-host with you? And that's kind of another interesting thing, because when you do both of them, when you do a co-host, there are some good things about being with a co-host. First off, with a co-host, you get to banter off lots of ideas, play off of each other. Just like on the radio, same concept on the radio. When you have two hosts for a program, they could be people who think the same or people that think very, very differently, and kind of go at it with each other. So you can generate a lot of talk, a lot of banter, a lot of very good ideas with it. So that's a good thing with it, but it could also be a bad thing, because you could wind up hating your co-host after a while, and then deciding cancel the whole podcast, or I'm the one who does most of the work. I'm the one who finances most of it. They come to see me kick off your co-host. Second, one of the nice things, if you do your podcast live, meaning you do it live for people to see on a podcast channel, everything from YouTube or one of the other hosts. If one of you is feeling sick, the other one fills in. So that's a good thing about it. The third, and that's kind of the earlier thing, two heads are better than one. And finally, different voices are out there. So you can do really, really good with co-hosts, but what I've seen is 2 is usually a good number. If you start to do 3, and I've seen some podcasts with 3, it tends to then start to kind of like be a bunch of guys, let's say 3 guys doing it. It kind of seems more like 3 guys just hanging out, shooting the breeze, and it kind of rambles all the way on. So if you want to co-host or co-host, I at least in what I've seen, again, everyone's experience will be different. I think 2 is a good number. Any more than that, you kind of becomes a club that kind of rambles on, and that's not what you want to do. So that's kind of important to do for you to think. So any of you out there who are thinking about doing podcasts, have you been thinking about doing it solo, doing it with a co-host, or this is the first time you've thought about it, said, hey, I never thought about doing a podcast with a co-host. So if anyone out there who wants to kind of chime in,